If anyone's ever told you, don't care about what other people think, it's terrible advice because you will always care. It is impossible. Your brain is wired to care. So this isn't a book about stop caring about what other people think. This is a book about we know that you always will care, but what are you going to do about it?
Hey, it's Renee. Welcome to the Into the Wild Show, the podcast for women who want to build incredible mental strength to level up their business and lifestyle. I'm Renée Warren, the founder of We Wild Women, author, speaker, award-winning entrepreneur, and your host. Together, we will make you unapologetic about shining your light, growing your business, and turning you into a wildly confident and successful leader. This is for you, the visionary, the go-getter, the entrepreneur, and for those that need a real kick in the butt to get going and to dream bigger. Each week, I bring in leading experts and entrepreneurs to help you take leaps in the right direction, because I know the best advice comes from someone who has successfully done it before. So, are you ready to level up? Welcome to Into the Wild. Hey, you wild women. My next guest is an author, founder, speaker, community builder, neuroscience nerd, and mama bear for small businesses. She is also the chief evangelist at Honeybook, where she supports over 100,000 independent business owners who are changing the world. She is also the host of the Independent Business Podcast and someone to follow on Instagram. On this episode, Natalie and I chat about her new book called Gutsy and really what it takes to lean into your superpowers, some juicy conversations, and I promise you, you will leave this conversation feeling fired up and ready to take a leap into something incredibly amazing. Please welcome the incredible Natalie Franke.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited for this for many reasons, but I want to just get this out of the way and say you have to go follow her on Instagram. We're just chatting about this. Natalie Franke. Is it simple as that? E at the end of Frank. Great content.
Thank you.
I love your stuff.
Thank you. I get nerdy with content, especially I'll say in the last year, I feel like I've started talking about business, like I call it nerdy, but really it's just like business truths that so often people don't go that deep to address. So I'm grateful that you like it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I've learned a couple things. I've also learned you are a really great interviewer. And there's the pressure on me to show up to be a good interviewer. I'm like, we're talking about this apple that I took a bite of before. And ironically, you're supposed to eat an apple before your interview. So I already knew that.
Yeah, you knew that. That's why you had the apple.
And you're not supposed to drink coffee.
You were way ahead of all of us.
Well, I was going to grab like a handful of almonds, but I was like, no, because I don't get almond bits in my teeth. So I'm like, not a good idea. Straight for the apple and only one bite. Anyway, I'd love to know, what do you do and why do you do it?
Yeah. So I am a mama bear for small business. That is truly what I do. Now, the roles that are kind of underneath that umbrella are complex, but that's the core of who I am. So if you were to think like, who is Natalie Franke? She's a mama bear for small business. In addition to that, I am an author. I've written 2 books. My first book, Built to Belong, came out in 2021. And then my second book, Gutsy, is coming out very soon. I am a photographer. I'm a creative. I'm the chief evangelist at Honeybook, which is just a way of saying that I'm an external spokesperson and an internal thought partner. I'm really an advocate for our community. So I go out to the community. I listen to what they're going through, what they're struggling with. And I bring that internally so that we can build a better platform to support them, but also so that I can do things like host our podcast, Independent Business, among other things. But, you know, my journey to get here with what I do isn't like a traditional path. I started as a wedding photographer. I picked up a camera in my senior year of high school and I fell in love with the ability to capture a moment as it was happening. And I photographed weddings all the way from kind of the summer of that senior year of high school through freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year of college. And I studied visual neuroscience and the psychology of seeing. So if you do end up following me, you'll see some nerdy, psychology facts. I love digging through research that's coming out, especially like neuromarketing and how the brain works and the intersection of business and truly like science, both psychology and neuroscience. And so that tends to filter in at times to the content. But when I got to the end of those 4 years of college, I had a decision to make. I was either going to pursue a more traditional path and go through recruitment, get a W-2 job, climb a corporate ladder, check every box that I thought I would check along the way. Or I was going to take this photography business that so many people dismissed as a fun hobby side hustle. They never really truly understood the magnitude of what I could see that I was building, and go full-time with it and really launch it into a full-time business. And I decided to do it. I decided not to go the safe route. I decided to risk it all, to the dismay of a lot of people. When I took my Ivy League degree and I sort of set it off to the side, I always say I tucked it in the visor. If you're driving down the highway, tucked it in the visor of my car, and I just kept on driving towards building an independent business. And so I went full-time into being a photographer. I did that for about 8-9 years. Wow. And we'll dig into the things that happened from that, led to building communities. Now I work in tech, I write books, I do all those things. But the core of who I am and the core of what really changed my life was making that decision to become a business owner. And it truly fundamentally, I think, is at the foundation of who I am.
Man, being a photographer is so exhausting. These are evenings and weekends, and
yes,
all of the free time is consumed by taking pictures of other people's memories.
It's a hard job. It's a very hard job.
Was it wedding photography or was it others? Just okay.
Yeah, weddings is where I ended up specializing. I, prior to that, had done a portraiture and different things, kind of exploring to try to figure out what I want to capture. But I really loved weddings. I really enjoyed, I think, kind of capturing this pivotal moment in a couple's life, where two completely separate worlds intersect and families come together, and there's so much beauty and different culture. It's a really incredible moment. So I think for me, it just fit. It was like a glove that fit,
That's awesome. I just did a branded photo shoot 2 weeks ago almost now. And wow, it was exhausting. So I bought this package. It was really cool from a brand photographer here in Kelowna. And it was a year-long package where you get a photo shoot every quarter.
Oh, I love that.
And you can get up to 60 whatever pictures. However, she went away for the winter to Costa Rica, and she was gone for the time I was supposed to have my last photo shoot, which was actually a gift. Because if you look at the evolution of my personal development in that year and a half, the first photo shoot was didn't get my hair done, didn't get my nails done. I just pulled whatever clothes from my closet, did whatever we could around the house. To the last photo shoot, which was absolutely staged with extra help, people pouring me coffee and pictures, people pouring paint onto piles of magazine for aesthetics. It was so awesome, but oh my gosh, exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a workout.
Oh, it is for sure.
But fun.
Yeah.
Super creative. And now that creativity you can see in all of your Instagram posts. It's awesome. So what's your core offer with your business?
Yeah, this is a great question. So I would say in this season, my core offer is empowering business owners. And that comes down to equipping them with what they need. And so you can look at it from different perspectives. When it's the work I do with Honeybook, it's specifically narrowing in on client flow management and understanding the science of self-made success and the science of actually building a business that is profitable, but doesn't kill you in the process of building something profitable, that leverages technology to really take the work off your plate. And so it's empowerment through tools, right? When it comes to Honeybook in particular. When it comes to my writing, I look at it through the lens of what is the infrastructure or the mindset shifts that business owners need in order to have that success. And so for Built to Belong, it was looking at the lens of community and competition and the intersection of those two. And with Gutsy, it's all about courage, and it's all about, the things that often hold business owners back from even going after the dreams that they have. I'm in a really unique moment where, I don't have an offering where I could say the core offering is that I sell a course, or I have, even my books, they're, yes, a core part of what I bring to the world. But I would really say that I look at it as what I'm here to do is to empower and equip small business owners. And for me, that's a particular passion because, yes, I've been a business owner, but also because I've seen all of the resources and the infrastructure that big companies have. And it infuriates me that independents don't have access to it. It absolutely keeps me up at night that small businesses are essentially competing with big businesses, but we don't have access to any of the same resources or infrastructure or even technological tools at times. And so there's this huge opportunity to bridge that gap. That is what I do. It's a little different and a little bit unique in that respect, but
Well, no, it's so true. When I ran my PR agency, we subscribed to HubSpot for our email.
they have awesome content.
It's a beast. If you have $10,000+ a year to invest into that CRM,
Right.
email, whatever it is. And yes, there's alternatives out there, which are great, and I use them too. But it's so true when you say that the people that can afford these resources, they get this 90% head start over the smaller businesses that are just trying to pay the bills, just trying to come home with some sort of at least balance in their life where they can enjoy life outside of work.
Yeah, for sure.
And I love that. It's a beautiful thing. There's so many options out there. Right now, I'm actually going through all of this too, Notion versus Asana versus ActiveCampaign versus blah. And I'm just somebody just tell me what I need. Here's a goal. What do I need? Tell me how to get there. It's exhausting. So in the process of you building your photography business, you created this community called Rising Tide Society. And a really cool thing happened. So tell us about that and then what happened with Honeybook.
Yeah, so we kind of pick up where I left off in the earlier story. I decided to build this business after graduation. And so I go full time into building my photography business. And really quickly, I realized just how lonely and isolating it is to be an entrepreneur. From the outside looking in, it's really easy to just assume oh, these business owners that are succeeding, they have it all together. They're happy, they're loving every day when they wake up. It's the world is their oyster. But when you're actually in the driver's seat of running a small business, it's incredibly overwhelming. And when there's cutthroat competition, especially for business owners that, maybe are in an industry where sharing and supporting each other is not the norm in any way, that can begin to erode at the joy that being that business owner really is, right? It can kind of make you feel trapped and, like I said, isolated and lonely. And so I started to feel that. That even as my business was succeeding, I was hitting all of my revenue goals, I simultaneously was also feeling very much alone. And so I decided to stop suffering in silence. I started talking about it. I started telling anyone who would listen about the fact that I truly believed there had to be a better way for us to support each other, that I acknowledged that maybe we were competition, but what if for just a moment we could instead choose to be community first? And that conversation sparked and ignited something that became Rising Tide. And so it was as simple as having that conversation with friends over a dinner table when we decided, what if we just started meeting up with others in our hometown of Annapolis, which is where I'm sitting now. It's a little city right on the Chesapeake Bay, about 45 minutes outside of DC. And we hosted a coffee style meetup. We invited every business owner that we knew of and just said, hey, come, we're going to gather, we're going to talk about business. The only rule we have is that if you walk through the door, you check your ego and your competition outside. If you're coming into this space, you're going to share what you know. You're going to be open to giving, right? And really walk in with not the traditional networking mindset of what can I gain from others, but this new mindset of what can I give? And stepping through the door first with what can I give? And that first meeting went really well and people shared about it on social media. Rather quickly, we started getting inbound from people saying, wait, I want that. Whatever that is that you all are doing, I want it in Charlotte, North Carolina. I want it in Monterey, California. I want it in Orlando. And so we very quickly threw up a landing page with an application form and said, if you want to host one of these meetups, here's how you apply. And Rising Tide went from this one coffee meetup here in Annapolis to a dozen meetups within a month, to 25 meetups within 3 months, to right around the 6-month mark, we were over 100 meetups happening every single month around the US and Canada at the time. And, we can dig into the particulars of kind of our path to sustainability, but we started this as a passion project. I had no vision for monetizing this. Truly, when I say it was volunteer, it was volunteer. 100% of the efforts going in were just because I and the other co-founders wanted to see it happen. Our businesses were funding our lives. And we hit this point, I remember right around September, where we realized, okay, this thing has grown. We're talking about hundreds of groups meeting, hundreds of leaders that need infrastructure, resources, and support. We're not charging for anyone to attend the meetups, and we won't charge anyone to attend the meetups because that was kind of a core part of what Rising Tide was always really about. But we can't sustain managing this entire community anymore. It's way too much. And so we started exploring paths to sustainability and monetization, what that might look like, especially those that didn't require us to charge members. Like it was really a big decision that we made, a big strategic decision, because that would be an easy route, would be charge for membership in the community, and it self-funds. But a little bit about my background is I was raised by a single mom. And as you maybe have picked up on in some of the conversation that we've had, I care a lot about accessibility to resources. And I care a lot about money not being a barrier to someone pursuing a dream, especially if they've been denied access to that type of support in the past, or it's never really been afforded to them. It's really important to me that entrepreneurship is truly democratized and is more accessible to more people. So we saw that as being kind of a core value that we wanted to stand by. And back in, this was October of 2015, we ended up flying out to San Francisco after getting a random email and a random invitation from this company called Honeybook that we had never heard of at that point in time, talking like almost a decade ago.
Wow.
To come out and like host a meetup here in San Francisco. And that was really the request, was like, just come out. We keep hearing about Rising Tide. All our members are talking about it. We'd love to meet you all. We'd love to host a meetup here. So we flew out to San Francisco to host a meetup, and we're in the Honeybook offices. We're having lunch with Oz Alon, the CEO, and the other co-founders, Nama, Shadia. We're just talking about the community. We're talking about independent businesses. And we're talking about all the things that we've been discussing, these things that genuinely either keep me up at night or light a fire under me to fight and to keep moving. And we realized in that moment, like they kind of said to us, like, that's very much what we're fighting for too. We're just using technology to do it. Like we see this path to helping business owners, and you all are pursuing it through community. Same vision, same mission, different paths to achieve it. Not to ramble further on this, but ultimately what ended up happening was we were acquired by Honeybook. Honeybook acquired Rising Tide. And
Woo!
I know it was
dancing.
Truly, I know, but very much unexpected. And we set forward from there. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. It was a really wild and beautiful journey. We were really lucky. We were very, very lucky.
I know. I feel like I like to say the word lucky, but also I don't like the word lucky. You created something people wanted, and you're like, I'm doing this. And think about how many people you served. And that alone was like, Honeybook probably saw that too and said, wow, this is amazing. We need this. And what a smart business decision on their part. Really. Let's just absorb an entire community.
Right.
And you created it. And it's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
What was in the name?
Oh, I love this. Okay, so I'll tell you the real on the name. When I say we, it was myself, my husband, our two co-founders, Davey and Krista. We were having dinner together, trying to figure out what to call this thing. Because prior to it, I had come up with the horrible idea of calling it, I don't even know if I should have meant this, creative cafes. Because I'm like, we're creatives meeting in a cafe. There we go. There's a name. And all of them were like, that's terrible, Natalie. We cannot call it that. So I'm like, all right. We'll come up with something else. And my husband was slightly drunkenly quoting JFK. It started with like, we'll go to the moon and do the other thing. And then it led into like a rising tide lifts all ships, which is attributed to him, although I think it's kind of a much more ancient concept that is sort of perhaps misattributed to JFK. But when we heard that concept, a rising tide lifts all ships, it really resonated with us. It really challenged, I think, this understanding of business ownership from being, if I win, you lose, to when we fight for all of the ecosystem, the entirety of small business owners to win, to have access to resources, to share what's happening in the marketing space, to teach one another, to grow together, we actually create an opportunity for all of us to rise. And so Rising Tide was born from that saying, a rising tide lifts all ships. It ended up being the perfect name because it encapsulated, I think, so much of what we were trying to accomplish.
It's so good. It's funny, this morning, actually, I was sharing some wins back and forth with one of my VIP day clients who's also a friend. And she's like, what are you doing in Croatia? Because we're going on this trip to Croatia. And I was like, actually, a friend rented a super yacht and invited all of his friends on. And she's like, I've always dreamed of going on a yacht, a super yacht. And I go, yeah, a rising tide lifts all super yachts. She's like, that's so true. But the way that I see it is like, it lifts your dreams. And another thing I want to add to this too is David Meltzer is such a brilliant mind. He doesn't believe in competition. he believes in completion. If there's any way you can help somebody complete something, whatever it is. And I was like, oh, that's so true. And I actually started reaching out to people in my industry that are considered competitors.
Right.
I'm like, how can we collaborate? And they're like, what? Who are you? How dare you? But wait, tell me about this idea. And I've had phone calls and I'm like, listen, there's so much abundance around us. If we're not supporting each other, how can we see this? How can I see this opportunity for you or me? Like in the PR space, everyone is so like holding tight to their clients or even just inbound requests. They'll just do anything to get a customer. Half the time, it's like there's people that come to me are not a good fit.
Right.
And I was like, you know what? I would love for you to go and work with Jess. Jess works mostly with tech startups, and I think it's a beautiful fit. That's completion.
Yep.
I'm not going to bend over backwards to try to work for somebody that's not a good fit. But I wanted to say that because I loved the Rising Tide Society. The name's great. So I'm thankful you didn't go with Creative Cafe.
Me too.
I almost feel like that's a podcast production company.
It could be. I mean, I'm sure someone's used it for something since that point. I should go look it up, but it just wasn't the right fit for what we were trying to do. And so, yeah, I'm grateful that, when you surround yourself with people that tell you the truth and aren't yes people and give you that critical feedback, good things happen.
You need those people.
You do.
I can imagine if it would have affected Honeybook's interest in the community.
I don't know. Who knows? Who knows?
Okay, so then all this stuff happened. Beautiful story. And now you're on your second book. And I want to talk about this because I believe you've lived these experiences that are encapsulated in this new book, of which I have yet to read.
Yeah, my new book is Gutsy, and it's all about learning to live with bold, brave, and boundless courage. The heart behind this book was a realization that I've had over the last 8 years of building communities for independent business owners. In recognizing that, no matter what city I went to, no matter how successful the business owner that I talked to, they all seem to struggle with this concern of what other people think. I even mentioned it, as I'm talking about my own journey and saying, I got this degree. And then I said, I'm going to go be an artist. And everyone panicked, right? Like everyone was like, you're going to go do what now? And I think that in building these communities, I've seen more often than not that it isn't failure that stops people from finding the success that they desire. It's often that they never even get started. That the fear of, well, what will people think if I bet on myself, if I launch this thing, if I, quit the job, if I start the side hustle, if I start sharing on social media, if I start creating content. There is so much fear of the opinions of others that we lose sight of the opinion that we hold of ourselves. And Gutsy is a book about understanding that the opinion you hold of yourself is far more important than the opinions that others have of you, and that there is a roadmap that you can navigate to do it scared, but do it nonetheless. And so that's really what we talk about in Gutsy. And, I pull from so many different places in the book. I talk about the science behind play and actually talk a little bit about neuroscience. We talk about failure and reframing our relationship with it. We go into so many different avenues to kind of help the reader who's reading it chart that roadmap for themselves around what it means for them to truly be gutsy and what are the things that they've denied themselves, the dreams that they've prevented themselves from stepping forward into, such that we can get them back on track and turn that pause into forward progress.
Where do you see a lot of specifically female entrepreneurs just stopping? Where like this is huge, I don't want to say glass ceiling, it's more like a cement room that's surrounded by your limiting beliefs. Where are people stopping?
I think that there is a lot of hesitation when it comes to truly having the confidence to bring yourself into the public space. And what I mean by that is that more often than not, one of the top questions I get, and I've always found it very funny, is how do you do what you do? And then I say, well, what do you mean, how do I do what I do? And they'll say, how do you just get on video and talk to the camera? How do you create content and just put it out on the internet? How do you show up? And I think that's really a space where I see a lot of pause. I see a lot of fear, or I'll see people that do it halfway, but that alone eats them alive. They're constantly scanning the comments for something negative. They're always afraid of what a competitor is going to think of them if they go and do a particular thing. I think that it really does come from this concern of external perception. And, it's rooted in the fact that as human beings, our brains are wired such that We don't want to be ostracized. We don't want to be ridiculed. We don't want to be criticized. And that's by design. I mean, ultimately, if you look back into the history of, humanity, there really was nothing worse. I'll go out and just say there was nothing worse than being ostracized from the group. That was certain death, right? To be cast out from your community meant that you would be denied resources and access to support and that you would die. And so the brain is set up such that we want to avoid that at all costs. Anything, even a whisper of frustration about something we've shared, even a whisper about somebody doubting us, it sets all of our fear on high alert. And it can keep us from actually moving forward into doing the very thing that we desire or doing the very thing that we are better than anybody else at doing. Simply from that fear of what are other people going to think and what are they going to say. And so it's interesting that you mentioned like a glass ceiling or a concrete wall, because there are certainly structural barriers that hold so many of us back. And I've come up against interesting ones myself in my own career that surprise me at times and that don't at others. But what I will say is that I really believe oftentimes we ourselves are the ones holding us back. And that's really what I looked at when writing Gutsy. Because we can't always control the structures that are around us that actually make this harder, but we can control the way that we react to it. And we can control, the way that we navigate our own minds and the way that we speak to ourselves and the way that we face down our fears. They're not going away, right? Those fears aren't going to disappear. Poof. I actually open the book by saying that. I literally say, if anyone's ever told you, don't care about what other people think, it's terrible advice because you will always care. It is impossible. Your brain is wired to care. So this isn't a book about stop caring about what other people think. This is a book about we know that you always will care, but what are you going to do about it?
Do you consider yourself to be a VIP, a very important person? Well, I do, especially if you are a female entrepreneur, you run a business, maybe you're an executive in a top organization and you know that your company just needs a little extra help to get to the next level, especially when it comes to building authority and credibility. Well, I have something for you, the perfect fempreneur or power woman that is getting world-class PR work, world-class PR advice and strategies without the agent's price. Listen, I've been in this industry for a very long time, 12 years, and I've seen the evolution of what public relations is, how to execute, how to work through the headaches of the unsubscribes, of the no's, of the time that you're pitching all day long and you're getting no replies. Those are called crickets. Let's smush those crickets. All you have to do is go to wewildwomen.com/VIP day to learn how you can get a world-class PR strategy built for you by me and my team that you can integrate into your everyday marketing initiatives. Because here's the thing about PR. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Yes, you have sprints, but it is a marathon. The people that are successful in getting on the top podcasts or successful in getting media coverage are obviously creating value to readers and listeners, but also that can provide the value again and again to becoming the go-to expert in your industry. PR helps you increase your authority, helps increase credibility, searchability. It's great SEO juice. And I know a lot of you are like, Renée, I just don't have the budget to hire a $50,000 agency. That's why I've created the VIP day. It's a done for you service. And all you got to do is take the strategy when it's done. And I teach you all this on the integration call, and you execute it daily within your organization. And it's not something that you, the founder, has to do. It could be your VA or your EA or even your second in command. The whole point of this is I wanted to give access to world-class PR strategies, tips, advice, execution on PR strategies to the women out there who want to grow their business and they want to be seen and heard. So if you're interested, go to wewildwomen.com/VIP day. This is a great compliment to Rachel Luna's book, Permission to Offend, because the thing that comes to my mind right now is I am so worried I'm going to offend somebody. And I remember just a little example I've already shared on my show, but our house manager, Betty, amazing woman. I bought myself a new car, a car I've been wanting for a year and a half now, and I finally just went and I signed the dotted line. And people are like, I've told some of my friends and I sent them a picture, and like, it's just a car, but it's not like it's a cheap car. It's a nice car. And I said, you know what, Betty, I'm just so afraid to share this on social media. And she's like, why? I go, I'm just so afraid of offending somebody. She's like, oh, you already did. Like, the reality is whether you do or you don't, you've already offended somebody. And I'm like, you're right. You're so right. And like that feeling of offending somebody is actually none of my business. It's their own story about whatever's going on in their life. And some of those people will be vocal about it. They'll make comments, they'll say something. Most people don't. But here's the thing. The amount of messages I got afterwards, and people are like, Renée, I see you working so hard. I love watching you lean into your power and shine that light. You deserve this car, was actually shocking to me. And I'm like, oh, wait, I actually need to share more of these stories because I'm inspiring people. And people are like, yeah, you know what? You inspired me to go buy this bag I've always wanted to get, or you inspired me to hire this person or give this person a raise. We don't know who we're actually inspiring because really that's what matters. It's not, the Karens that show up have a comment to say, right? So people are going to be offended no matter what. No matter what.
Transparency is powerful.
Yeah.
I've always believed that. And I think even in your story just now, like that's really for me what I take away time and time again. It's transparency is powerful. Secrecy holds all of us back. And when we pause to move forward on something and we choose secrecy out of fear, or we choose to hold back out of fear, because again, there are examples where it's like, oh, I don't want to share that, but it's not rooted in fear. It's rooted in something else. Hope. Sometimes even with my kids, when we have big successes, different situations, I'm like, well, that's their story, not mine. And so my desire not to share is from a place, it's not out of fear, but when we hold back in secrecy out of fear, instead of leaning into this ability to celebrate the abundance and to be transparent in what we are pursuing, it actually holds everybody back. I talk about this a lot from the lens of pricing and talking about money. In business, for a very long time, I remember coming up and always being taught by, mentors and influencers in the industry, like you don't tell people how much you're making and you don't talk about money. And even down to like when I was a photographer, people were like, you never put your prices on your website. Don't ever put your prices on your website. You don't want your competitors to know how much you charge. Just always made me mad. It always made me mad. And I've become very much a outspoken advocate for the opposite of that, of saying, no. If we don't talk about money, if we don't talk about how much we're charging and how much we're making, if we're not opening the floodgates to radical transparency, then we will forever be trapped in a race to the bottom. We will always be operating out of a place of fear of, but what if they find out what I charge? Good. Let them know what you charge. Because when you do that, we're upholding everybody. You talk about rising tide, we're upholding everybody to higher standards. We're able to, when a newcomer starts a business, they're not just charging the lowest amount possible out of fear because they don't understand the value that they're bringing to the table. They don't understand the incredible offering that they've provided to the world. They now have benchmarks to look to. They have others in their industry that are charging more money, that are raising the tide and maybe even raising their prices. And it's not from a place of fear, but it's from a place of hope and of understanding of the value. So I'm a big fan of anything transparency. And yeah, whether that's sharing your wins and sharing them with pride or being open about things like money, like transparency is really a powerful tool.
I was going to take the price off my website, but you just solidified it staying there.
Leave it on for science too, by the way. Science supports it. Yeah.
I'll pin it. Make it flash like a 1990s website. It's flashing. I wanted to say a quote that I love that I'm totally going to paraphrase because I was really good at butchering these things. It's something about a plumber, but beside the story is, I'm not charging you for the time it took me to do the job. I'm charging you for all the years of experience I learned to do this job in the amount of time it took me. So that's like my VIP day. People are like, you can get a world-class PR strategy in a day? I'm like, you give me all the things I need, I fill in the blanks because those blanks took me 12 years to figure out. And pow, they're like, whoa, this is amazing. How much does this cost? I mean, maybe I should make it a week long and only take one day to do the job and just let them sit there thinking I'm doing the work over 7 days and then deliver it on day 7. Smoke and mirrors, baby.
But I love that understanding. Like the moment we start to reframe how we perceive value, not as a construct of amount of time it takes equals the value delivered, but rather what is the actual value delivered? It's really powerful. I had a recent conversation with Jason Pfeiffer. He's the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur magazine. And, we were talking about the fear that a lot of people have around something like AI and these new technologies that are just completely disrupting and in some ways destroying the way that we've worked for a very long time. And there's a lot of fear around, he uses an example of billable hours and attorneys are terrified of the idea of something like ChatGPT making memo writing so much easier and so much faster because it cuts down on billable hours. But he raised a really interesting point that, we're kind of touching on here, which is like, rather than asking ourselves, oh no, is this going to change the amount of hours being produced? Let's ask ourselves whether that was really the measure of value that we should have been, leaning on all along.
Ding, ding.
Are the hours put in, right? Like, are the hours put in really connected to the amount of value? Because if we can do it in 15 minutes, but we can do it in a way that took 4 years of education plus 4 years of mentoring plus like having the ability to convey something in a certain way, plus the connections that you've built, whatever it is, all that value is built over time. If we can provide something faster to a client, that doesn't make something less valuable. Arguably, that actually could make something far more valuable. And that's why I love what you said about, the 12 years it took you to gain all of that insight and all of those connections and all of those learnings in the PR space that you can give to somebody in a one-day intensive. That's so incredibly valuable.
Yeah. And when I do the integration call with them too, I go through it fast because when you know something so well,
right,
you also forget on the other side that they don't know it at all. And they're like, whoa, wow, okay, this is awesome. Then it's like, there's the hope, but then it's like, you got to execute on this, people. Okay, so a couple last questions. In your book, do you have any sort of frameworks or methods that you talk about?
There are a bunch of different frameworks and methods. Actually, so much so that my publisher was talking to me, we're going to turn it into an active workbook. So stay tuned for that so you can actually print out some of the pages.
Yeah, I love workbooks.
But, one of the things in particular that I have really come to appreciate, and I will say this one may catch you a little by surprise, is developing a plan for play in your life. Now, before you go running away saying play, what does that have to do with success and business? When I was doing a lot of research for the book, I stumbled across the science of play, in particular, the role it plays in neuroplasticity of the brain. So if we think of the human brain and we think about our ability to innovate, to be creative, to build new neural pathways, to do new things, remember, we're not stuck. Our brain is not stuck. But there are conditions that actually make it easier for our brain to build these new neural pathways. And those sets of conditions are influenced by what we do day in and day out. That's why habits can be so powerful. We can create conditions that enable us to be the best version of ourselves. And one of the things that I discovered in this research is that when we play, when we actually carve out a plan for play in our daily, weekly, monthly routines, we ignite parts of our brain that are and make it such that we can be more plastic, that we can develop more innovative strategies. We can think outside the box. We can even change the roles that we're so used to having in our lives. Meaning, if in one space you're always the leader, as you start to play, you get to explore what it means not to lead. You actually get to explore what it means to step back and watch others that are leading and learn in the pursuit of doing that. Or the flip, areas where that's why improv is a great example of play, where you actually are challenged to step outside of the comfort zone, to think on your feet, to screw up and look like a fool and not care what other people think because the stakes are lowered in play differently than they are when you are working, on your business. And contrary, which is really important to note as well, when you are in a situation that is high pressure, when you are in a place or a business where it feels like the stakes are high and any mistake, any hint at failure is going to be catastrophic, that is at complete odds to everything that I'm discussing. Your cortisol levels go up. What does that do? It makes your brain less plastic. All of those, chemicals ultimately shift your brain out of that mode that enables it to be everything that we want it to be in the innovative and creative space into something that's more rigid, right? And in a little bit more of a survival mentality. And so in the book, I walk you through kind of understanding what that means, but then also evaluating for yourself, what does play look like? When's the last time that you even played? When I say that to you, do you laugh and write it off as unimportant? Or do you understand that this might be something that's been missing from your life all along? That this is something you stopped doing in childhood, that you've become an adult and you've adopted these rigid structures of who you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to behave and how your day is supposed to look. And perhaps the reason that you feel stuck is simply because you haven't allowed yourself the capacity to dream beyond the walls that you've put up around your life. And so, when's the last time that you played? What does play look like for you? Actually taking the opportunity to create a list of things that you would like to explore and do. And in the book, I give you a ton of different examples because it's far wider reaching than maybe at first you'd imagine. Like I mentioned in improv class, it's one of the best ways to grow as a leader and a public speaker is to take an improv class. Actually, it's a great way to become a manager. When you take improv, you learn little things like yes and, how to build upon somebody's idea rather than shut them down. So when you have a team member that throws something out to you that, well, maybe you don't want to run with, rather than responding and saying, no, that's not what we're going to do, you yes and. And by yes anding, you actually build trust between you and the person you're working with. But you build on that conversation rather than closing it, and it adds to the value collectively that you bring to the table. It's just like a tiny example, but that's learned through play. That's learned through something like improv. So in the book, there's a pretty clear framework for how to incorporate it, but I love talking about it because I think it's something when I first was doing the research and chatting with people, they're like, play. It sounds so simple. And yet.
No, play. I love play. Play is progress. Play is productivity. I play drums and there's like no correlation to doing business, but there is every correlation to doing business because it's like learning a new language. Guess what happens when you learn a new language? You build new neural pathways and you actually get smarter.
Yes.
More creative.
I love that you play the drums.
And plus, it's a great way to like get your anger.
Yeah, the drums.
Like, they're actually right next to my desk. And then I wanted to say something else about play. So play is productive. Play is about progress. I actually had a client. She's the play expert of Canada. And she's all about teaching women that are going through menopause how to use play as a form of movement in their day to help them with weight gain and living a healthier life. And it seems so simple, but it's not because we don't give ourselves the permission or the capacity or freedom to go and play. And what does play mean? It's not like you don't have to go kick a ball around. Oh, that's great. It's the improv class. It's drum lessons. It's whatever. Skydiving.
Yeah, skydiving.
Just the simple thing.
Highly recommend. I've done bungee. Bungee is what I've done. Highly recommend. I don't know what it did to my brain, but I was never the same after that experience. It's like,
it shook you up.
Yeah.
Probably like half came out of your head. And
I went and got a tattoo immediately following it. So if that tells you anything, like bungee was really cool if you're interested in that. But I also write in the book that it took me until my 30s to realize that it's okay to suck at something.
Totally.
I went my whole life feeling like if I can't do it well, there's no point in doing it. And it really wasn't until I started to unpack the power that comes from just doing something and sucking at it miserably, but doing it nonetheless. Like, that's another thing to consider. So if you're somebody that has always kind of, protected yourself, guarded yourself to only do the things that you feel like you can do well, this is a really great wake-up call to think about all those things that maybe you've wanted to try, but have never even allowed yourself the opportunity to pursue out of fear because you suspect you won't be good at it. But to acknowledge that you're going to do it anyway, not because you want to be good at it, but because you simply want to do it. Rollerblading.
That's like me and cooking.
Cooking.
Terrible. You said rollerblading?
Rollerblading, that's one of my things. I'm not very coordinated though. If you've been following me, I had brain surgery. I had a benign brain tumor, and coordination and balance are just not attributes that I have.
Maybe you shouldn't rollerblade then.
So maybe not, but maybe like in a padded room. Maybe one day I'll get like a giant...
roller skating in a roller skating rink.
Yeah, a rink.
More control.
I'll have like 10 elbow pads, 10 knee pads. If I do it, I will post it on Instagram and I'll tag you so that you know.
Bubble wrap. Mouth guard. Yep. All the stuff. The rugby, like
all of it.
Ears to protect your ears, everything. Helmet.
A bubble suit.
I can just see you. Wow, you would look so great.
That's what I'm going to do.
Oh my gosh. Or like those bubble things that you can put on, your little game where you can play, you run and you bump into each other.
Done.
Just put one of those on. Perfect. Love it. We solved that problem for you. So if you ever see a roller skating bubble girl around town, y'all know who it is. Safety first. Okay. This has been amazing. I have one last question for you. When I ask you what it means to be a wild woman, what is that to you?
You know what? I truly believe it means to be gutsy. And I know that's the title of my book, but that in my heart is what it means. To be a wild woman means to be gutsy. And that can be defined by you and you alone. For me, being gutsy means having the courage to be unliked. It means having the courage to have an opinion. It means having the courage to love fiercely without fear of the what ifs, amongst so many other things. But that's what it means. To be a wild woman, it means to have guts.
I love that. What hit home for me actually just like pulled on the heartstrings and also was a big punch in the face was having the guts to be unliked.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's true. It's true. And I think we all try to avoid that because we want to feel like we belong. Okay, so your book comes out August 15th, yeah?
Yes.
But people can go pre-order online now?
Yes, please do. Please pre-order. I'll also recommend if you've got an independent bookstore, in your hometown or in your city, this is my little loving reminder as a mama bear for small business. Go pre-order the book at an independent bookstore. If you do that, shoot me a DM. I'm going to have something special for you. So I'll have something special for you if you shoot me a DM and let me know what independent bookstore you ordered it through. But yes, please pre-order Gutsy.
Yes.
I really believe this book is going to impact a lot of people. And I really hope that if you're listening, you're one of them. Yeah.
I think so too. I love it. I'm going to put all the links in the show notes below. Natalie, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So there you have it. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Into the Wild. To make this girl happy and to help reach other women who are dreaming of starting their business, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and everywhere you listen in. Also, if you want to find me in the wild, check me out on Instagram at Renee_Warren. That's RENEE_WARREN. And leaving you with one of my favorite tips of all time, the best advice you could ever receive is from someone who has successfully done it before you. Until next time, ladies, peace out.